Okay, everyone, I am so sorry that this happened, but basically we did record on Tuesday, which was yesterday for me, probably maybe yesterday for you, maybe a couple days ago for you. But the recording was not finished processing when I had to leave class and kind of surrender it to the next class that was coming. And I didn't get a chance to get back into the classroom to put it up. In time before I had to leave again. And I am out of town, so I actually can't go back to school to fix it. So, what I've decided to do is to take some time out of my day today to make sure that you have absolutely everything that you need to be able to complete the assignment by its current due date, which is, I believe, um, Monday night at 10 p.m. If you need an extension, you know what to do. So, let's begin. There's going to be a lot of cuts in this because I'm just kind of retrofitting this from Zoom, from a Zoom call. We're going to make this work. Okay, so quick review, right, of the process that we are doing. I will actually show you where you can skip ahead. It'll be in the timestamps of the video. So if you do not need to see this presentation, just go ahead and skip along to the next chapter, okay? Now, for anyone that might have a little uncertainty or confusion around the kind of work that we're doing and what's expected for the assignment, this is a very important thing to take away from the lesson that I'm trying to teach you overall. And that is that there's some confusing language around what is a high poly, a low poly model, and their relationship and why it all matters, right? So first off, we remember this process before that I described to you, right? Decide what's a model, gather references, prepare to fail, right? Why this is actually important is first, quick reminder about how true this really is. And second, to focus on these like 5, 6, 7, and 8 part, that make the silhouette, make the large detail, then make the smaller stuff, and then smaller and smaller and smaller. Right? We start large and then go down from there. We don't go right to the polished piece. We don't go right to the nitty gritty and to the details, not with any artistic process. 3D modeling is not an exception to that rule, right? So same philosophical consideration. All right. Now, when I say high poly, this is usually what people mean. And we're kind of referring to high resolution, typically sculpture work. There's a lot of polygons that go into the details of an asset like this. I wanted to share this artist with you. Benjamin McDonald made this piece, thought it was cool, and I think we all agree that it is pretty cool. Opinions aside. Oops. Hey, that's Benjamin's. Never mind, he changed his link. That's fine too. All right, so let's go down to the next one. Now, when I say low poly, this is often what people are referring to when we're talking about low poly. And why wouldn't they? This is a low poly aesthetic. It's very cute. I like it. Can you make money doing this? It's harder. It's possible, but it's harder. Um, and the thing is about this sort of thing is that if we were to look at them side by side, right? I'm not really here to make an argument or a case for one being better than the other, right? And one is a stylistic choice, it's fine. But what I can say is that if you can do high poly, then you can do low poly. I think we could agree that that's true. If you're capable of doing the work on the right, you're more than capable of doing the work on the left. Now, there's some nuance to that, right? I mean, doesn't make you good at color theory, it doesn't make you good at standard design fundamentals, but well, actually I think that might be a bit of an overstatement. I think you do have to have some design fundamentals to be able to or like get this kind of detail as well. However, oh, that's weird that it went backwards. However, I'm not really here to make an argument for which one's better, right? I actually quite like them both. But if you can only do low poly, the chances of you being able to do high poly also, well, they're not really as connected, right? Because you can do the left doesn't mean that you can do on the right. It might be true, but this on the right is closer to what I'm targeting for your skill set through the 3D art program, at least with us, right? And many of us won't get there, and that's okay. But if you have enough context for how these things get made, you can continue to practice and continue to strive for high poly work, right? Okay. Now, when I'm talking about high poly and low poly, for our assignment and this process, this pipeline study, I am not talking about this. I am not talking about a high poly model with a low poly aesthetic choice of it. I'm not saying let's make a low poly version that is the low poly aesthetic. No, 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 no. These are not what I'm saying. And I take an extra time, a lot of extra time communicating this to y'all. I have no frustration with doing so. Happy to do it because I like to put a big ol' asterisk here. This is something students regularly confuse this with. So I really like to send that message home. If you're tired of hearing the message, I hear you, I see you, I'm sorry, you can skip ahead. But if this is news to you, we need to really understand thoroughly that what I am not referring to is this high poly and low poly when I'm referring to our homework assignments. Okay, now, since we're not saying that, what am I saying? I'm saying something like this. Here's an example of a chair that I made a little while ago, and on the left is the 3D sculpture in ZBrush that I did. In the middle is the low poly representation of that asset on the left. They are different. On the right, that is the materialed 3D model of the low poly asset as it was developed in Substance Painter, finished anyway. My goal with this as a 3D artist is to make a low poly model, the middle piece, look like the high poly model with all of its sculpture detail. And also the concept piece, right? The concept art. I'm trying to get it as close as I can. That's the discipline that I'm trying to learn. Now, in production, when we're referring to high poly and low poly, I made it a faceted render on the right so you could really see the all of the polygons in the low poly model. I could actually probably have reduced it even further, but I'm splitting hairs here at this time. Ooh, ooh. Now, on the left is the sculpture from ZBrush. On the right is the lowest resolution of the same model. Now, is this from ZBrush? No, actually it isn't. I used the same background because I thought it looked cool, but it's actually a very different model. And the one on the right, I modeled in Maya. Can you model it in ZBrush? Sure. It doesn't really matter where you get it, as long as certain things are true. Now, usually you have to do a process called retopologizing to get it to look on the right, but there are many methods that we can do to kind of get these things to match. Now, when we look at these, we know that they match in some ways and not in others. And I think we can kind of see it, but I want to try to be as clear as possible so you really thoroughly understand how you're getting graded on your assignments moving forward. Okay. Now, remember this process? Make the silhouette, then make the large details, then the medium, then the small or the polished. Okay. The two models must match in silhouette and large details. In small and medium details and polish, they do not need to match. Now, this sort of space in the middle between 6 and 7, between the large details and the small ones, lies a middle ground where we get kind of subjective. What you think is a small detail, maybe I think is a medium detail. And so you might decide to like not match it, and I would decide to go ahead and match it. And that's okay. Like where we choose to like slide that scale between these two is okay to be a little bit flexible. But when it comes to the very large details and silhouette, we should be pretty clear that they need to match in those ways, right? So now having said that, let's take a look at this model again. They match in silhouette, the form that holds it, the whole thing of it together. If we turn these around, they should look mostly the same. Now, faceted lines here aside, like this is where you can start to decide whether or not that is a small or a large detail. I was pretty conservative on the amount I'd spend on that silhouette. And if I were being really careful, I think I should probably redistribute what's here um on my skull and give me a little bit more on the chair if I'm gonna be really nitpicky about it. I think I should do that. It would look better. Anyway, self-criticism aside, they match in silhouette. They match in what I refer to as large details, meaning like I went ahead and put in some divots in the buttons here, but I didn't add the detail of the button itself. There's absolutely no fine detail that they match here. You've got little sculpture divots, the scrapey here, right? Now this is kind of interesting, right? Because I felt that this impacted the silhouette enough that I wanted to account for that in the topology here too. So you can see that there is a little bit of subjectivity here. The goal is that if they can match as close as possible, you will have far less trouble with the material bake later. All right. Now, where things are typically made. Silhouette, I usually use Maya for. Large details, Maya. Small and fine details, maybe Maya, maybe ZBrush, but the polish, absolutely almost always ZBrush. I had a few questions in class, so I'm going to try to remember them as I include them here for you guys. And that is, can I just do this all in ZBrush? You may. You may. Now, the process I'm going to be showing you is going to develop something called a base mesh that we will expand and extend into ZBrush so that I could use the lower subdivisions of the model to pull for my low poly. This is probably the most straightforward, basic way of doing that and holding on to a lot of uh, we'll say fidelity of those models. However, there are many times that we have to recreate that low poly either from scratch, using a tool like the Quad Draw tool in Maya, which you will learn later, or you know, uh, overshooting the geometry a little bit and then reducing topology to have it fit. And I mean, which way is the right way to do it? I think as long as you get to the same end point, it doesn't really matter too much which way you do it. You're going to design your own pipeline as you develop as a designer. But I'm going to show you this process for a pillow, which I think is a very simple model to do, to hopefully give you a little bit of a starting off point where you can then consider for yourself if there's a better way to do it, right? There's really no right or wrong way, you know? Okay, now to the assignment. Yeah. Okay, so this is our current assignment. We're going to 3D model this pillow. And I'm going to walk you through it step by step. You follow along with me today, you should be able to get an A on your homework assignment. Okay. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to want to save these images. And also you're going to want to make sure that you have opened up Maya and created a scene or a project for them or navigated to your like class project that you've made earlier in the quarter. Um, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I think make a new project here because I don't think I've modeled anything for this class this quarter on this computer. So we're going to kind of start fresh here. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and pause this while I wait for Maya to open. All right. Okay, we are back. So let's see. Do I have a class here? Oh, 16 prep. I'll just put it in there. That's fine. Now, I'm gonna go to new, make a new scene altogether. And now, like before I get started, oh geez, I don't need the human IK thing open. That's okay. Don't worry about that, guys. I need to get those images into my project so that I can access them visually, right? So let's go ahead and download these. I'm gonna click Save Image. And for me, it should open to the last place I had saved some images. I gotta go to Documents now. So to Maya 2024. Oh, no, I need to go projects. Excuse me. Projects, class prep 2016. There it is. Now, just a quick reminder, source images is where we want to put in images that we will be pulling into our project, not putting out. So there's pillow 1 and save image. Hopefully go to the same location. Yeah, pillow 2. Right there. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so let's go ahead and set up our windows. I'm going to click panel layout with the 2 on here. And in the front view, I'll head to view, image plane, import image. Let's look at pillow 2 because that's the most front facing pillow. Oh dear, that is not at all the scale it should be. Maybe in my channel box. Oh wow, that's really weird how it's like. Also, that's not the image that I picked, is it? Weird that it's acting so funny. Too. All right, that was weird. Don't know why I did that. I just re-imported the image from here and it seemed to be fine. I'm gonna move the button to be about dead center, but this it won't be perfect, and that's okay. That's actually kind of what makes this pillow, I think, a little interesting, is that it is not a perfect circle, and we're gonna want to account for that when we make it. So, all right, let's just kind of get ourselves set up for success here. I'm gonna put looking through cameras front, and it's no longer in my way. All right. Now, either way is fine if you start off with a cylinder or if you start off with a cube. I'm going to start off with a cube to show you a little bit of a process called subdivision modeling. So let's click cube. And when we look at cube, we're looking at it in all of its glory as is, as it was designed to be a six-sided perfect square, the scale of 1 unit. When I hit the number 1, nothing happens because that's the current view that it is in. And this is its true form, right? 2, however, gives me something kind of strange. I have what I would call, oh, I don't know, a ball inside of a box, and the box is kind of a ghost box that's holding the ball. Well, what it actually is a smooth meshed preview representation of our cube. It allows for me to be able to edit a mesh with a kind of smoothing representation of it to allow for really nice curves, I think, more fluidity in how you model. And is one of the most common approaches to something called hard surface modeling. What's kind of funny is a little ironic is that my first experience with teaching you how to do an approach that is used mostly in hard surface modeling, we're making one of the fluffiest surfaces that you can think of, and that's a pillow. You think of something being soft when it's a pillow. Um, now, we are going to approach just some fundamentals on how to control a form like this, while also trying to approach the correct design fundamentals in staying with the silhouette, large and then smaller and smaller, right? So let's start off by hitting 1, 2, and 3 and see all of the views that you can look at this cube. Remember, it is still a cube. You can hit the number 3, it's still a cube. It's just what will happen to it if we were to subdivide it in ZBrush or another smooth renderer. Now, there is a way to commit to this geometry eventually, but we're not going to do that just yet. Not for this assignment. So we're going to just stick to this model. And I prefer to work in this, what I call the view of 2, because I like to see both the cube itself and its representation in the preview. Like I like to see them both. So I'm going to start by selecting all of the faces and then uniform scaling it up to try to make it match the form as much as possible. Now, please understand that the philosophy that I'll be showing you in this assignment remains true for almost all types of art, where we're always going to try to do the most with what we have before we start adding more things to it. This is extremely important because if you start adding too much geometry right out of the gate, you start to lose the capacity to control the form. And so we have to gently go up. We don't just start off with cylinder and then go from there to try to make it soft. We want to make sure it stays that kind of soft, squishy form as we go. Okay. So right now, you saw all I did was like uniform scale it up to kind of match the silhouette. It's not perfect, but that's a good start. And then again, trying to match the silhouette before I add anything else to it by just adjusting the scale of it. Now, I'm kind of using this reference here to give me an idea about how thick that pillow is. So, I mean, it's not perfect, but it's probably about there. And right now, my pillow looks more like an M&M, kind of like a Skittle than it does a pillow cylinder. So how do I get these edges around here to be a little bit more firm? Well, I think those of you that came to class and can remember is we used an insert edge loop. Like what I did here is I could just like click in here and then scooch it on over and it'll start to give it more form. So what's actually happening here is that Maya is taking the value, the XYZ value of all of these verts right here and averaging them out for a curve. Now, you don't need to worry too much about like how the math is working because you don't have to solve it any other way than visually. So a few ways to do that is to add in an edge loop, like I did, or to do a bevel. And I'll go ahead and do a bevel too, just to kind of show you how that works. I'm going to select the edges that, oops, Daisy, no, I'm not. I'm going to select the edges that I want to be firm or sharpened, like a sharper edge, and I'll use a bevel instead. Let's go here. Oh, I don't know why I looked at the viewport. I need to look up here. There's bevel. Now you can kind of see why it's not working as well as I want to, but that's because the bevel is just a little too big. So if we make it a little smaller, let's give it like 0.2. There you go. It starts to make a tighter edge. Let's do 0.1. Nope, not 1, 0.1. Go. 0.05. Okay, cool. Now, if you want this to be even tighter, making this a small number is very helpful, but you can only go so far before it just kind of caps out, right? So like if I did 0.001, which is I think the smallest I can get, the curve is actually still pretty small. Like, or not small, but like soft, still small. Leave me alone, geez. It's still a soft curve. Like you can kind of see it. And I want that to be, I don't know, maybe I want it razor sharp or much sharper. So this is a bit of a trap, right? Um, I can't get it any tighter. So maybe I get it in my mind that what I should do is insert an edge loop and control that myself. Let's just drop that in here. Well, that's a nice thought. But as I kind of move it closer, we might accidentally, especially if you're not paying attention, just trying to get it to be tighter, accidentally deform our low poly actual mesh. It's not really low poly yet, but the base mesh that I'm working on here and kind of ruin its topology. So we don't want to do that. Now, what you really want to do when you want to control the outcome of that average value is that instead of giving it an extreme number, we give it an additional number. Put it in the middle. That really tightens up that edge for us. That's kind of great. So that brings me back to the bevel approach, right? How I was like trying to show you guys how to bevel. Um, Let's come up to here to bevel. Boop, boop, boop. Bevel. And I give this a nice small number, like 0.5. Is it not doing it? That was weird. Bevel. Oh, it was 0.5, 0.05. Still kind of curvy. Instead of giving it an extreme value, give it an additional number. There we go. That's looking pretty good. Pretty good. That is if you want it to be a sharp edge. I actually don't because it is a pillow, so I'm going to leave it at about that much. And what's kind of nice about using bevel at least is you can get both sides of it to, oops, to be kind of uniform if we just give it the same value. Let's come back over here. 0.05 instead of 0.5. And good. Looks pretty decent. I like it. It's a start. Okay, so I'm getting closer to what I want for my pillow. And I think the next thing that this pillow really wants is the button in the middle. I think that that's probably the next most important bit of the silhouette. I mean, we still have the ridge and we still have some of the outside of it, but for now, that's what I want to work on. So let's see if I'm going to make this, pardon me, drop that, make that smaller, put that away, I'll make this X-ray vision. I'm going to rescale this to match closer to the ridge because I think um, an edge around the outside will help me make it more rounder and fluffy. See how it kind of looks a little bit like a button? It's just a little too straight on the outside. I'm gonna add an edge loop there. Let's put the connect, hit enter, and then like scale it out so it's like more fluffy, kind of bevels out a little bit. Just a little bit. And now the pillow or the button in the middle, I'm gonna just do one side of it for the sake of time, but ordinarily, yes, I would do this on both sides. I'm gonna select the face in the front, and while holding down Shift to extrude within, I'm gonna just scale it down to fit about the size of the button. Now, I'm actually paying attention to the actual button size for this, not the 3D representation of it, because that's considerably bigger. So I'm going to stick to the button size itself. And then I'm going to move it using the transform tool in to kind of match. Now, this is where it can get kind of interesting. You could extrude from here to get a button form, which is not bad. You could totally do it. But I think it's a better idea to add a button as a separate mesh. We were kind of coming across this problem in class, and it was just a far better way to approach it, which I've done it before. I don't know. I couldn't just didn't remember it. Now, um, I'm gonna kind of push this in, and I'm not gonna be aggressive with it because I'm gonna give it some more geometry on the inside to give it a pillow to the front. But like, if we pay attention to where that pillow is pillowing, look at this again. maybe from a view that makes some sense. It doesn't all go in evenly, right? Like it starts to, it goes in a little bit on the front and then pops out a little bit and then goes in about what, a third of the way in or two-thirds of the way in. And so if I push this in and then I add an edge loop right about here, I can pull that out to kind of make it fluffier. And I mean, if I want even more control, just so we can kind of, you know, like play with how fluffy that button really feels, right? Okay, that feels pretty good. I might be being a little aggressive with the button depth, but it'll give me some room to put in something else. So next up for the button, I am going to use, we could use another box. That's actually fine. I'm going to, just go ahead and scooch that up. I'm going to hit 2. Now it's looking less less buttony, more ball-like, which is kind of weird in the middle here. So I'm gonna have to give it some button form. How's about I connect here a couple of just like an edge loop, put that in. That's pretty good. This actually might be sufficient. Just like put that in here, put it on the button, and we want to make sure that it's not too big to scale, so I think that's probably more appropriate of a size. If you want it to be a harder edge, I think you kind of know what to do. We just need to add in another edge loop there. Let's do it right there. Yeah, there you go. Button. Don't need to do too much more about that. Cool. Next up, oh dear. Yeah, I'm only gonna do one side of it. I did say that. It's bugging me now. You know what I know? I know what I'll do. I am going to remove half of this mesh and then just like mirror it later. That's all I'm gonna do. I'll mirror the button too. So we're just gonna worry about the front of the pillow first. Now, I think now the next part is going to be this ridge, right? This little ridge around the front of it. I'm gonna select the bevel that I've made. If you used an insert edge loop tool, you might need to account for the direction that it extrudes out, which is okay. It's okay, you can do that. There's really no wrong way to do it. I'm going to use the extrude here. And I'll be a little aggressive about it so that we can see what we're looking for. I need, oh, about 0.1. There you go. It's popping out, but it's not really very pretty. I think actually we can work with that though. Like you can see that it popped out, but it's a little too smooth. So if I need this and this guy to be a harder edge, which is the inside right there, it does make sense, right? Like that needs to be a harder edge on the inside. Let's use the bevel tool again. I'm gonna use 2 so that we can see it happen in real time. Kind of hard to see, but you can see that. Let's use the bevel tool. All right, there is pillowing now. Or it's like kind of tight in there. That's good. That's good. Let's give it a 0.05 bevel. And if you want it to be even tighter, give it an additional value. And you can really see that crease. Like it's really like a hard edge there now. Um, oh gosh. Okay, why can I not pan? Oh geez, okay, my button's acting funny. Oh, I can't middle mouse click because of my mouse. It's fine. Okay. So, this will now give me a pretty decent little like ridge around that edge now. Let's look at it from 3. I like looking at the subdivision preview of it and getting like a good sense of how it's subdividing. No, this is not a good high poly yet either. It's neither a high poly or a low poly, this mesh. And it's what it's intended to be is a starting off point for what will eventually be our high poly. Some questions I've received in the past, totally reasonable. What do you make first, the high poly or the low poly? I'm usually targeting the high poly first. Almost always. Maybe not always, but almost always. The low poly is informed by the decisions that the high poly make. And this is going to change significantly even in silhouette when I bring it into ZBrush. So we need to just kind of get it mostly there. And again, I've heard folks say like, well, why do it in at all in Maya? Why not just make it all in ZBrush? Well, because usually when you're constructing a sculpt in ZBrush, you're using things like Dynamesh and Z Remesher, and those all reset your previous subdivisions, which means you have no choice then but to create a low poly from scratch to match it. And there's no amount of like brute forcing the automated tools in ZBrush that get you usually a very well controlled low poly mesh. Now, for a lot of static meshes, that's fine. Animation, though, requires you to control your topology a lot better than that. So I like to teach that while you learn, but there are some tools in ZBrush that can let you like reduce poly count and hold on to most of the silhouette. Sometimes, though, you lose a lot of detail that way. Anyway, I digress. Now, this is almost ready to take into ZBrush, but what I really for sure need to do is finish the mirror of it. So let's go ahead and go to Mesh, Mirror, and I need to mirror this on the Z. Where did you go? Mesh, Mirror, Mirror tool? Where's my mirror tool? Oh, there it is. On the Z, negative, and world is fine. And we'll apply it, and that looks great. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing to the button. Just apply that. Should be good on both sides. And now I have got the beginnings of a high poly model. It's not done yet. It's not done yet. I'll call this pillow, and I'll call the other one button. Okay. Woo. All right. Save your work. Save it. Pillow. Okay. All right, so I will pause there, and when I get back, which will just be a split second for you, we're going to move this over to ZBrush. So go ahead and power on ZBrush and pause this video. Okay, everyone, I tried to open my ZBrush and I've been troubleshooting for a minute, so I'm gonna have to make this a two-part video because I have to change computers in order to do this next piece. So on part two of this, how to do this assignment, I'm going to have exactly what we made in Maya exported as an FBX, which I could show you how to do very quickly because I can't open up ZBrush. So I'll just kind of show you how you do it here. Go to Maya. Select both of the objects that you're going to need for your export. Then head to, no, I don't need that. Oh, let's delete history. Delete history. Freeze transforms. Center the pivot. All that stuff. Then go ahead and head to File, head down to Export Selection, and then what you're going to do is save this somewhere that you will find it. I'm going to have to move this to another computer, so I'll just put it here for now. And this will be Pillow Base Mesh. Now, it doesn't really matter if it's one or two or three when you do this. I usually like to do it at ones to not make any confusion about it, but it's fine either way because we're going to be changing this mesh considerably on the next stage, okay? Okay, so on that note, join me for part two in just a moment, and that'll be up shortly, okay?